Welcome to Rewrite the Mother Code, the show where we can explore our inner mothers to actualize our greatest selves. Through interviews with incredible guests, live coaching sessions, and my own experiences, we're going to dive deep into embracing feminine values and reparenting ourselves. So be prepared to show up, hold space, and be mothered in a way that you never have before, but have always needed. It's time to rewrite the mother code. Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of Rewrite the Mother Code with me, Dr. Gertrude Lyons. I am thrilled and honored to have Lucy Handley as my guest on this week's show. So you're going to hear a whole lot more about her. She reached out to me some time ago to interview me around the work that I do, holding that we all mother and all women mother, and expanding the definition of mothering to be much broader and more inclusive, because we all conceive, create, and give birth to, yes, children, but also ideas, dreams, careers, relationships, pets, anywhere where we're putting our intense mother energy. And in all of that, the most important person we need to mother is ourselves. So Lucy had reached out to me because she's an amazing freelance journalist, and she interviewed me around a piece she was doing around finding joy in life without children. And I was honored to be a part of it. So I'd love for you to find it. She did a beautiful job with this article, and very personal and vulnerable. And we're going to get to speak with her today. So hang on, and we'll bring her on in just a moment. Well, as I promised, here I am with Lucy Handley. Lucy, thank you so much for coming on my show.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me, Gertrude. It's great to be here.
Well, it's thrilling. I shared briefly, before we got on, that we met via you interviewing me for your article that recently came out in The Guardian, and we'll go more into that specifically. But I wanted to let everyone know a little bit about who you are from the typical bio kind of place, because it helps us place people and it has its value, right? But
absolutely, sure.
It's not all of who you are. What you do is not all of who you are, but there's a lot of really cool stuff. Okay, so Lucy's been a writer for more than a decade. She has worked for several business and lifestyle outlets as a journalist and editor before going freelance. She also writes and presents videos, takes part in podcasts, yay, me, hosts webinars, and has recently ghostwritten an award-winning memoir. What's the name of that? I could find it.
It's called 100 Million Hair Ties and a Vodka Tonic. So it was for an entrepreneur who invented the Invisibobble hair tie, which I can show you now, which obviously not everyone.
Oh, of course. Yeah. I had one on earlier today.
Yeah. So it's like a kind of a spiral hair tie. And she invented these when she was at university and sold 100 million within a few years, and it continues to run this very successful, very interesting business.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it was great to kind of work with her and hear her story and help her craft it a little bit.
And it's award winning. So
it is, yes. Yay. It won a business book award for best business journey, I think the category is. So it's kind of like the memoir journey. And she's only the entrepreneur, Sophie Trellis Tweed, is, I think she's probably just turned 30. So she's been running the business for a while, and the book is all about, she sources from China, and then she finds out that the factory has been destroyed, but nobody's told her. And then, obviously it's a product because it's a spiral shaped hair tie, a bit like a telephone cord. It's the kind of thing that gets copied quite easily.
Oh,
so
yes.
It gets copied, and, then Amazon tells her she has to take it off Amazon. So there's loads of stories. So it was really interesting to work with.
Oh, now I'm even more intrigued. I'm going to get that book. And your writing spans a lot of topics, right? You're very much in the business and finance as a writer, and you were shortlisted for a freelance writing award in 2021 in that arena. And you've covered everything from how the pandemic changed China's health system to the strange experience of holidaying in Las Vegas alone.
Oh, yes.
And the ways that brands make the most of TikTok. So, I'd give that you're not just a one note, one area writer. Your writing has been in national, international media, including CNBC.com, The Guardian, and The Telegraph, and editor at large at Catalyst, the member magazine for the Chartered Institute of Marketing. So many cool things. And obviously, you'll find out how you can find out even more about Lucy on her website and all the ways. And we'll link to the article that she wrote that I got to be a part of, which I felt incredibly honored to do so. So I know that just touches on things for you, Lucy, but I think it gives a good flavor.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I'd love for you to just then speak into kind of the space I opened up around who you are and some of your journey. And then we'll get into, the journey specifically around what brought you to write the article that I was taking part in, and we'll go from there.
Sure, thank you. So what can I tell you? So I'll try to summarize this in an interesting way that's hopefully useful in some way for people listening. So I'm from London. I grew up in London. I still live in the UK. I actually started my career in advertising. I worked in agencies as an account handler for several years, and then I switched to become a journalist. I didn't become a journalist till I was 30, and that was also a tough time in my life because I lost my dad just after I started my first job in journalism, and I'd been living with my parents, and they'd been helping me out because I'd been studying, and I'd been helping them out because my dad had been poorly. So, my 30s were quite tough in lots of ways, and I'm sure we'll come back to this, but that was interesting because it was at a time when lots of people were meeting their spouses and settling down, and then they started having children, and meanwhile I'm kind of grieving, and I've just started a new career. So actually, that was quite lots of sort of pivotal moments, tricky moments, quite tough stuff. And then I suppose if we're talking about my career, you introduced me talking about my work, so I'll talk a little bit about that if that's
please.
Okay.
Yes.
So my first job in journalism was at Construction News, which is a British paper that's a magazine that covers the construction industry, which at the time there's so much investment. So London hosted the Olympics in 2012, so there's a lot of construction around that. And we also have a new railway system called Crossrail that was being built that's finally opened now, called the Elizabeth Line. So there was a lot of kind of like meaty stuff to get my head around as a journalist who didn't know anything about construction. So, and then from there I worked for Marketing Week. I was a features editor, which is a B2B, business to business magazine. And then I worked for a lifestyle magazine for a couple of years. And then that actually went into administration, which means it ran out of money. And that's when I became freelance. So actually that was a kind of moment when I was kind of forced to go freelance, but it was actually the best thing that happened to me because I absolutely love being a freelance writer. And, as you've kindly said, I have had the opportunity to cover loads of different topics, and I believe that variety is the spice of life. So that's kind of brings us up to today, I guess, in terms of my career, certainly.
No, thank you. And it's how our life interweaves with, we move forward based on like what's happening in our immediate surroundings, right? And with everything you had going on during that time, to pivot like you did and to make the choices that you did seem like, well, of course, this is what I would do and what I would be doing. But you mentioned like, but a lot of the people I know and friends around me were doing different things, right? In their 30s. So we'll just jump right into, you in the article you wrote in The Guardian, how I found joy in life without children of my own. And it's a very vulnerable, beautiful revealing of your journey in that arena. And then to choose to write about it and have it published is a big deal, right? It's a really big deal. So even just starting with, how did you decide to come to write it? Having experienced it, it's like, you didn't have to write about it. You could have had your journey and not shared it with the world as you have. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, it was and is a journey. And I guess going way back from a very young age, I always thought I would have children, right? It's an assumption that you have as a human, as a woman. It was, you know, we would talk at school about, oh, who do you think is going to get married first? Who's going to have children first? And I remember saying, oh, you know what? I don't think I'm going to get married until I'm 30, you know, and that was like, because I want to live my life and find out who I am, right? And I'm now 46 and I'm single, right? So that doesn't that didn't kind of pan out, but that's fine. Like, it's childhood things. You're sitting around on a desk and we used to sit on our desks and put our feet on the chairs at lunchtime, very, very badly behaved. And then, as you said, when I came to the age of 30, I certainly was in, you know, I was single. My dad was very sick and he passed away when I was 31, and sadly had a range of different illnesses, and, you know, losing him was extremely difficult, and it's, you know, it still is. And I would say, and I know this is kind of like a big backstory to how I came to write the article, but I guess it feels quite important because it's about how I kind of came to be okay with not having had children, because it's something I always wanted. It's something I always thought would happen and kind of assumed would, a little bit blindly. And I spent some of my 30s going, oh my gosh, I just want someone to look after me. I need to find a man to look after me. I just lost my dad. I obviously could never replace him, but, you know, I felt really lost, and I was, you know, in a really low place for quite a few years in my early 30s. And meanwhile, I'm kind of surrounded by people who are just about kind of like getting engaged, getting married, kind of getting partnered up. Not everybody, but and you know, I was overjoyed for my friends. I love a wedding. I love a love story and a great relationship, and, you know, but it is something that as the years went by, I was thinking, okay, when's my time? When's this going to happen for me? And towards my late 30s, I thought, okay, you know, I really want to have children, and then I think I went through a point where I got to my early 40s, and this is sort of at the point where I sort of opened this Guardian article. I'm walking down the aisle of a grocery store, and I'm in the pizza aisle, and it says "perfect for families" on the big sign on the pizza aisle. And I think, sort of, where's my family? I mean, I have a family, right? I'm very blessed to have, like, my mom is amazing, my sister, my nephews, my brother-in-law. But, you know, I wanted my own kids, and it's just this, the narrative is around families, you know, the deal for families and family holidays and 2.4 children and this sort of, you know, and I didn't fit into that. And I think that part of the wanting children, actually, if I'm really honest and I really get deep, part of the sadness around not having had them was because I felt like I was left out, right?
Yeah.
All my friends were having them.
Yep.
And it was the sort of fear of missing out and the fear of being lost and the fear of what if. And I think that was possibly even stronger than my desire to reproduce or nurture another human, right? I'm still a nurturing person, and we can talk about how I feel like I mother, or my mother codes now.
Yeah.
But I sort of got to the point in my early 40s where I thought, shall I do this on my own? And I went to a clinic, which was great because they had specific open evenings for single. Mainly there was, I mean, I guess it was all women there who wanted to maybe think about having IVF on their own. And I decided I didn't want to do it on my own, partly because they said it's quite unlikely to work because of my fertility at that point, also because of the expense, and also what it really came down to was that I just didn't want to do that whole experience on my own. So so I can talk in more detail about this, but I think I got to the point now where I'm 45, and, you know, something that I think, you know, Jennifer Aniston, for example, she talks about it, and she's in her early 50s, and now she feels like she's kind of like on the other side, where people are not asking her anymore, and she has been open about her own fertility journey, right? So, and I do have that kind of other side feeling. And I remember thinking a couple of years ago as a writer, oh my gosh, one day maybe I'll write about this, but I'm not ready now. I can't accept that this may not happen for me, right? And I'm fully aware it may still happen, right? I'm fully aware that, you know, I may choose to foster or adopt, and I'm fortunate to have those options. You know, I may choose to, who knows, you know, if I meet the right partner, I may choose to receive donor eggs, who knows, right? But as I am now, I'm thinking, you know, I wanted to find a way to feel joyful in life exactly as it is. And I think I just got to a point where, you know, you and I spoke about a year and a half before the article came out, because I actually thought I might put it into a book.
Right.
And I wanted to explore my experiences and the experiences of other women and men of my age and older and younger who had chosen not to or didn't have children. And actually, the choice thing is interesting because it wasn't really a choice for me. It was a circumstantial thing. And then now I'm on the other side and I'm like, okay, I need to make the most of my life. And so obviously you kindly spoke to me because I know that you help people with their journey to parenthood or motherhood in whatever way that means.
Exactly.
So that was quite a long answer. So I'm happy to dig into any of that or whatever works.
Well, it's long, but I wouldn't even qualify it with a long, short, whatever. It's beautiful. And was sitting here appreciating you sharing. There was no way I wanted to interrupt because of the way you were building on that, but I will underline a couple things, you know, right from the start and then throughout, you know, how it's still, and it probably will be for some time. It's going to be, I think, a while before we don't, even though we're more open to a variety of choices and, you know, women choosing to have children or not, but it's still very much in the mainstream. It's, you know, it's a knee jerk to ask people, oh, do you have kids? You know, oh, you're married. Then, you know, if you're married, like, oh, you don't have kids, you know, there's always there must be something wrong or it'll still happen for you. I mean, there's so many phrases that you hear. Oh, you might still find some, like, it's always like, and I think you were saying that toward the end where it's, well, I still could, you know, so that choice for sure is always available, you know, at whatever age. And that's kind of cool. And there's value in both leaving that open and kind of drawing a line in the sand. You know what? Like, and that's what I love about how you decided I'm going to write. I want to be clear on and really enjoy the life I am living right now and not be in that, like, well, later, you know, when I have worked with women who have these beautiful lives and beautiful careers and that, but very vulnerably sharing like, yeah, but you know, none of that really matters unless I get married and have a child. Right. And I'm like, oh my gosh, if you know, obviously I'm hearing it through a different lens, you know, how these concepts have supported them to really fully value themselves and then make that choice. You know, I've had couples, I've had single women who've just said, nope, I'm single by choice. I'm single without children by choice. And I'm creating my life and it's beautiful. Right. And it's beautiful. It's everything, right? Just like any life is. So I wanted to underline like just how much, you know, we still have to work through that code. And I love what you said about, gosh, if I were really to tell the truth, there's so much of it is like, oh, everyone around me is having this experience and I'm not. And some of it is like, I want to fit in. Two, I want the experience because everybody's doing it for you to, you know, and I love when women can just be honest, like, but I don't know, the like the whole thing about the actually having the child and doing it like wasn't at the top of the list, right? It was there, it's there, but maybe not, you know, fully at the top of the list. And I think that's really important truth, you know, to tell. I'm underlining some of those things and I don't know, any reactions to what I'm saying that are resonating with you?
Yeah, so I was going to say actually the why question, the fertility consultant that I went to see in my early 40s, she said to me, you know, she had my test results sort of to see what my ovarian reserve was like. And she said to me, you know, why do you want to have children? And I've actually spoken to friends who have been through IVF and they constantly said that they got asked that question and it was triggering for them. And actually, and it was triggering for me at the time. And I sort of, I used to sort of think, well, it's my right to, and that's what happens, which actually, you know, looking back, sadly, it's not just what happens for people. And also, you know, I was also in a sort of vulnerable place where I blurted out, so I don't die alone, right? And which is the sort of classic response, but actually, you know, and that was a fear I could not articulate to anybody. And then I happened to have a conversation with a friend who is also a life coach in lockdown in 2020, and I don't know how we got onto the subject. And I said, you know, that's my greatest fear. And she said, well, okay, now you said it, you've got it out there. And actually, You
Mm.
know, I kind of got over that because, like, sadly, some of my grandparents died alone and they clearly had kids and grandkids. Does it really matter, right? And and children, you can't expect them to look after you throughout. It's not a guarantee they'll look after you throughout the rest of your life, et cetera, right? So that's the sort of,
Right.
I've got over that one. But I think the why question and what you were saying about the expectations and the questions around choices, and then if you choose to get married, and once you're married, people then get, are you having children, why haven't you had children, are you having another one? And I still get those comments. I was at a gathering the other day and there was a baby there that was a really cute baby, and I said to my friend, oh my gosh, that baby's gorgeous, I want to give him a cuddle. But I didn't know the parents very well, so I didn't really feel like I
Mm.
could go and cuddle their baby, right? So and he said to me, oh, are you getting broody? And I said, he knows how old I am. And I was like, oh, I think that ship might have sailed. And that's how and it depends who says those kinds of things to me, right?
Sure.
So I was on holiday in Spain, and for work. Well, sorry, it was a kind of like I was interviewing somebody for a travel piece during
Mm.
the holiday, and he had a 1-year-old. He was showing me photos of his 1-year-old, and he said to me, "Do you have children?" I said, "No," and he said, "Oh, not yet." And I just went, I just smiled, I didn't say anything, and it's funny because it's actually the day after that my article came out in the Guardian.
Oh
Um,
my gosh.
yeah, so that was a moment, right? And I was just like,
Yeah.
it was almost, obviously I still remember it, but it was like I didn't feel like it was a dagger in the heart. It was okay, and I'm now at the point where I can kind of respond to people in an honest way, and I know that, and I'm also super aware of not saying to a friend of mine has a partner, but I'm super aware of not saying, oh, are you going to get married, oh, are you going to get children, when are you going to move in together, because I think that they'll tell me if they want to tell me, and it's really
Yeah.
no one's business, but everybody
Mm.
thinks that it is.
It is. Hi, I'm so excited to share with you my 2024 Spring Equinox Self-Mothering Retreat that's happening this March 2024. And I would love for you not only to consider it, but to attend. But in considering it, hey, just knowing that you would be leaving cold weather, if that's the space that you're in, and coming down to just magnificently beautiful, warm, nourishing place of 𝐒𝐡𝐤, Mexico. 𝐒𝐡𝐤 meaning land of the goddess women, and coming to really take time for yourself. Okay. And that I am learning more and more isn't just a nice thing to do or something extravagant or something selfish. It's essential. And I really want you to take it seriously, to consider, just think about, what would it take for me to go? It's a 5.5-day retreat, getting from where you are, getting there, landing there, and then being in a space that is all about you. It's all about nourishing you. It's all about tuning into you, using everything around us, the nature, the food, the beautiful people, the rituals, ceremonies. I bring it, we really bring it. And we go deeper and deeper as the days go on, and we release, we let go, we bring in what is nourishing, what is empowering, what is that space of just really divine feminine energy. And we do it in the community of women. It's not for everyone. I will be honest, if the idea of leaving and not making it work, or it's just too hard, not for you. If the idea of, spending that amount of time inwardly focused and going to that level of self-awareness doesn't sound like something you're willing to do or put the time and energy into, then it's not for you. And it's good to know that, right? So this is for people who are serious about what it means to mother themselves, what it means to take time for ourselves, and that gift, and what that gift can bring to us. It was originally right after my fall retreat. It filled right up. But now some people, it turns out, are not able to come. So I do have a handful of openings. And if you're listening to this and you're willing to take that step, please reach out to me. We can do a discovery call, or you can put a deposit down. I would love that. And you can do that by going to my website, www.drgertrudeLyons.com. Go to events, and there you go. It'll all be there. There's a beautiful page there for you to explore. I look forward to hearing from you and then seeing you on my spring retreat. Just there's these lines that we cross just thoughtlessly. And I love hearing how, your experience has helped you be more sensitive, and aware, and same for me, right? I don't ask those questions or bring them up, but learning how to, and I love how you're sharing that it's been a journey or process to feelings I now have when that comes up. Like,
Yes.
and I think you've said before, like, how you've come to feeling much more peaceful about not having children. And so I always kind of whatever coach or, like look at it from a couple perspectives is I don't have to wall myself from that hurt or, fear or the feeling, but there's an acceptance, there's a processing of that feeling that I can get more adept at. Right. But and realize that just because you ask that question, I don't have to answer it. And I love that. Right. I don't have to, I can choose who I'm sharing, where I'm at in my journey with that, and I can experiment with different responses. And I'm not thinking of any off the top of my mind. I can be playful about it. I could decide to have a snappy retort, kind of, and they're all okay. Right. Like they're all okay. And I think it would sometimes probably be of good service to let people know, that we'd like to curb that. Like, what is it need do they have to know that? Right. And I know some of it is like, oh, I have kids. Do you have kids? And then we can talk about our kids. And gosh, if we don't have that, what are we going to talk about? And I think that leads to, how this has opened that journey of like, I still have a purpose. Hello, I'm still living a purposeful life. And I think that's always one of the things I so want to underline is just how, wired in our culture over, I'm going to say at least a couple thousand years, but I think more like 5,000 to 6,000 years, that wiring came about in a patriarchal system that we were complicit in. I always like say that this was, we've all been in this together and we're trying to unwind it, but that unwinding, doesn't happen overnight. And I think I'm saying us as, women reclaiming that our purpose is way bigger and vaster. Children is a beautiful thing. And gosh, what a miraculous gift that we have this capacity, but it isn't why I don't believe why we're on the planet. Right. Like it's why we're living this life. So I'd love to hear kind of what your journey's been like looking at, this, putting purpose. And I know we talked in the article about creating a vision for yourself and, there's all of that, what that has meant for you.
Yeah, so that was super interesting. And I think, you and I talked about it and you talked about the why question. And I believe that that's a question you ask people in your work. And sometimes the answer is it's to do with a yearning. People want to make a difference. They want, to help someone grow and change. And I think, I had done kind of vision boards in the past where I'd stuck lots of pictures onto a piece of cardboard with the things that I desired in my life. And I think that, I think you talk about how goals are different from visions and purpose. And I suppose mine kind of, I don't know if it was a mixture of the two, but it was about how I wanted to feel. And yes, my vision board had pictures of a man and a child. It also had a garden and it had some nice holiday destinations on it. But I look back on that vision board, which is slightly tattered now, and I think, well, I don't have the man and the child, which is the sort of tick box thing, but I think it's more about a feeling that I wanted to have. And I'm not saying that I'm there, I'm done, because I think it's, life goes on until you die, right? So
Totally.
You have to appreciate, and coming back to what we said before, you have to appreciate where you are in the moment. And I think, to answer your question, like, where am I with that kind of vision and purpose? I think it's like, I don't have a neat answer, right? I did do some coaching work in the pandemic with a coach, David Edmonds, who was brilliant at helping me to understand my why or my purpose. And I think I did come up with a phrase. But I can't, if I'm completely honest, I don't think it's a thing that I kind of walk around thinking, right, this is my purpose, but I'll tell you what it is. So it was to do with me being here on this earth to help other people find their sparkle in life, right? So that's not saying I'm going to become a coach and I'm going to help people find their why or their purpose, but I suppose it's like, I do like to help people feel good, and that can manifest itself in different ways. So I think in the article I wrote, I talked about, volunteering and flyering my street, sending out, making little flyers for where I live in London, which there's a lot of terraced houses and lots of flats on a street. So there's lots and lots of people who live here, and kind of inviting people to join a WhatsApp group, and then also joining a co-working space so I could be around community and trying to contribute to that. But I'm not saying I've kind of like switched from wanting to be a mother to wanting to be a sort of, for example, a charity worker or a volunteer, for example. It's not as clear cut as that.
It's sure.
But I still feel purposeful, and I still feel like I have a lot to give. I don't know if I've really necessarily, there's more work I could do on that, actually. And I think the nurturing element is still there, and I still want to make a difference in people's lives, right? And I have 2 little nephews who are nearly 6 and 3, and they are 3 and 3, and the other one's 3 3/4. And I want to, and I'm close to them, and I want to help them learn and grow in a way that maybe only an auntie can. I don't know, who knows? But I love to.
I feel like don't mean to interrupt, but that one where I don't know if it's, no, I know, because I've been around it in a number of ways, that the aunt uncle role is so undervalued or underestimated. And it's, and it's different in every situation. What it provides, it's not a grandparent, right? It's not the parent. You have this distinct role that is possible should you, choose at whatever level you decide to take it on. You don't have all that responsibility, with them. And I don't mean like, oh, so you can be, just have fun and be playful with them. No, you can, you have certain windows in, or certain, aspects that being a parent or even a grandparent just can't and won't have. And I'm particularly kind of on it strongly because, I ran for 26 years. I ran these parent-child weekends, adventure weekends they're really ultimately intended for the parent to have a space to talk about how they're around their learning and growing, right? And what being a parent is bringing up for them. And, but then the kids get a lot of leadership training and social emotional intelligence. And so they're these really beautiful weekends, but we also have aunts and uncles on the weekend. So variety of age ranges, like there's teen leaders. We don't quite call them aunts and uncles yet. And then people who come and volunteer. And there are so many of those kids that talk about like the connection they have with those aunts and uncles. And it's not like they come every year. They might have that connection one year. Through a variety of circumstances, but how much value they bring, to the table in that mix. And I don't think they'd be the same weekends if it were, just the families and just the parents without that added layer, of adults. So I'm very much pro.
Yeah. I love
that. Yeah, very pro aunt and uncle. And they come for their learning and growing. They come because they're on their own journey. Whether it's my husband helped out on those weekends before we had kids, because we laughed about this, because he was going to figure it out and know how to do it, not make all the mistakes that he sees them, like it was such a guy thing. But a lot just come, for what I think one of the big reasons, or one of the big unspoken treasures that, can happen in parenting is learning and growing ourselves, right? They're a vehicle. That's why expanding it, beyond the kids, because I see the same thing happen for the aunts and uncles, like, watching the families and what that stirs up, seeing their own mother and another mother, seeing themselves as that child, and, what they can learn on their journey, in that is it's kind of the same for everyone in a way, right?
Yeah.
So all that to be said, I want to, put a big, strong, like, well, maybe, the aunt role, it's like, no, we're going to hold that role very importantly.
Yeah.
And
I
you
mean,
can be
yeah.
as intentional as you want about it. I
Yes.
coach a couple who are very intentional about how they are and what they choose to do with their nieces and nephews. We have to remind them sometimes how important it is, but they see it reflected back in the kids. So anyway, yeah, go ahead.
No, it's great. I love that you run those weekends, and I mean, it sounds incredible. I was going to say so much of what you said resonated, and I was going to say there's a couple of things. One is, it's incredible to see children develop and learn new things, and in my experience of it, I saw my nephew learn to ride a bike just like that the other day, and sometimes children take naturally to these things, and sometimes it takes a little bit more time. And and he just borrowed a friend's bike and off he went, and he just wants to show me how to do that. And that's just, it was just beautiful to see. And then the
Love
other thing
that.
I was going to say is, I am really, I have read one parenting book. I may read more, which is Philippa Perry, who's a British, I think she's a psychotherapist or a psychologist, I'm not sure which, but she's a therapist, and her book's called The Book You Wish Your Parents Had Read. And it's a
Good
parenting book.
title.
Yeah, great title. And I listened to the audiobook, and because I wanted to understand a bit more about what my friends were going through and a bit more about my own upbringing. And obviously I wanted to understand parenting styles of today and how you help the children in your care to grow, and how they need and want to be heard. And so I just wanted to understand a little bit more about how to kind of respond in the moment. And I don't want to give the impression that I'm looking after my nephews all the time. I'm not. My sister and my brother-in-law do most of that. In fact, I would say all of it almost. And I do kind of go in and, but if something goes, one of them falls over, or one of them's crying and doesn't feel heard, and I want to be able to understand how to respond in that moment. And like I said, I've literally read one parenting book. I don't think that I'm a parent, and I know how hard, I can see how hard it is from the outside. But yeah, it's very special to see that parent-child relationship grow as well between my sister and brother-in-laws and my nephews.
Well, I know you were kind of almost apologizing for it, but I love that you've read a parenting book, right? Because you're like, I'm going to be around kids. I'm going to, some of that's for myself, and just, well, I'd like to know that, and I'd like to learn about that experience, right? And where I'm going to play a part in it, I want to understand some of that too, right? Because I think it's very responsive. I love that you did that.
Yeah. I mean, I know what I would like to read. I would like to read more. So, anyone has any recommendations?
Yeah. Well, yeah, we can talk about that after. I'd love to think of ones that would be really interesting given, what we're talking about and stuff. But I also want to jump back real quick too. Thank you. I know it can, for sharing your, what you came up with for your purpose statement. Like, that's very vulnerable. So I just want to acknowledge that.
Thank you.
And I was thinking, one thing that I would, if you're open to hearing my thoughts on it, if that's okay. Because I love it. That you want to, help people have the sparkle in their life. It was something like that, right? I think what I would say before that is, my purpose is to sparkle and find and continue to, find ways to learn and grow and sparkle, shine as brightly as I can, and lead others and support others to do the same.
Amazing.
Right. I think there's something about us owning, like, and our own journey is purposeful, right? It isn't just, I don't think our purpose necessarily has to be always in relationship with someone else. Like, I think it starts with ourselves, and doing that thing that we're doing for ourselves. And then, and then I want to make a difference to others. I want to share that. Yeah. How does that resonate with you?
Really resonates. No, I love that. And I think it's, it's funny. I was just, I wrote a note down as you were speaking because I didn't want to forget. But I think part of my purpose is in order to try to help other people feel life sparkle. I think, the piece I wrote in The Guardian was about how I found joy, right? And I really wanted to help yes, of course it was cathartic for me, but I wanted it to be as helpful as possible for all the people
Totally.
reading it, right? That's almost more
Absolutely.
important. So, because I'd been on the journey, I've kind of like, yeah, it's still a journey, and I can't say, you know, I see my nephews and I see my friends' children, and yes, of course, sometimes I wish I had my own, and I don't think that will ever go away, but it's taken time to get here. But, I really think that if, I've just written down here 35-year-olds, so a woman or a man or whatever, a person of any gender who
Hmm.
reads this, or listens to this, I want to be able to show people that you can have a great life without
Yes.
children, and you can have a great life and a purposeful life and a content one, however you find yourself leading it. you know
100%.
I know that I'm a fortunate, in a fortunate and privileged position, having had a good education, and growing up in a middle class household. I'm really fully aware of that. Yeah, I think that, the fact that I was ready to share this feeling with the world of I didn't have children, it's been really painful. I went through, some very dark places. And actually, in the article, I talk about every time someone told me they were pregnant, I felt like another nail was being nailed on the coffin, right? And I
Hmm.
was in it, which is a dark, dark image. And I was
Hmm.
hesitant as to whether I should include it, but I thought actually that is how I felt. And
Yeah.
it wasn't to do with my friends at all. It was to do with me. I was joyful for them, but I was sad for me at the same time. And then
100%.
I don't feel like that anymore. Like, I really do not. But I suppose
It
the
gives
big
permission, right? It gives you
exactly.
being willing to put, it's like, oh, I shouldn't share that. No, because
Yeah.
then, a person, a woman reading that is going to say like, oh, okay, like me feeling that is normal, right? I'm not a
Yeah.
bad person because
No.
in addition to the joy, it's also hurtful or painful to me.
Yeah.
And I should and that opens up a space to then feel okay to have that full feeling, right? Like
Yes.
it might be a cathartic release in there or some aspect of the healing that then contributes to the journey of getting more and more at peace with it.
Yeah. And I suppose, like, when I was, say, in my mid 30s, I was kind of like head down thinking, okay, I'm on the apps. I need to find a husband. I need to find and I sort of wish that I had, if there'd been someone I could look to and go, okay, there might be another way. And life on the other side, if you don't, I'm single at the moment. I would love to meet someone,
Mhm.
but again, the attitude I have, it's about, trying to appreciate my life as it is. And yes, there are days when I really long for somebody and I really feel sad about not having had that wonderful partner. And of course, there are highs and lows there too, right? But I think,
Yes.
mostly I come back to sort of, feeling happy and content. But I always had this thing of, even when my dad was ill, I wanted to know what life was like on the other side when you'd lost somebody, right? I didn't,
Mm.
not that I was trying to speed through the grief, because you can't, but I wanted to go, okay, how is this? Like, what's the, how do you kind of come to terms with this? Or how
Yeah.
is life afterwards? And so, if someone's listening to this and they're in their mid 30s and they're in this question, or if they're trying to get pregnant, or they want to find a partner, or they're thinking about doing it on their own, or they're not sure if they want to have kids or not, I think it's, if you can find different perspectives and go, okay, things are going to be all right if I don't, right? Life can be okay, and actually it can be more than okay. It can be joyful,
Hmm.
if
Your
you don't.
hair.
So sorry, that was quite a long answer, but I just
No, it's not. We'll work on you apologizing for your your
actually,
flow
thank
and
you. Yes, I
sharing.
can have an I'm not sorry for anything I said. I
Thank
won't
you.
say it
We'll
again.
take it back. Take it back. It's a side conversation, but
It
such
is.
a habit, and it's tends to be more women who do it than men. So
Hmm.
we'll work on that one too, right?
Thanks.
And just giving ourselves space and all that.
Yes.
No, it's really so beautiful, and you sharing that and this whole conversation reminded me there was a point at which I had recently completed my doctorate and been like steeped in this journey, and just so much about preparing for motherhood, being in it, but then getting such a big response from the with around this bigger topic. We all mother. We have so much, the
Mm,
choices are all so rich and big and beautiful. And I had been working with a couple who had been, always thought they'd have kids. it wasn't, there were definitely wasn't going to happen naturally. Explored adoption, and then just kind of hit a point where it's like, we're going to draw a line in the sand and make this choice. And I've known them, I know of their life, but they were so the way they were sharing about all that they were doing in their life. And I knew, having now at that point, like my kids were, older, high school, college, or whatever, that I had never actually let myself give myself permission to have regret for having children. And I said it out loud in this group, and they're like, "Oh, you can't say that. Like, what will your kids think?" I'm like, I think they'll be fine. I'm not saying I don't love them, or, but that both of those could be true, that I could also regret, like, wow, what would I have done? Raising children takes a lot of energy, and a lot of focus. And, I lost myself in it for a number of years. And, so the whole coming out of it and seeing, like, yeah, it's beautiful, wonderful. And we don't talk also about the impact, that has. And wow, if I don't, this is possible. And I let that, like, other possibility be there, and like, yeah, like, I'm sad I didn't have that. Right. And I hope you can hear that but it was my own vulnerable revealing to just acknowledge that. Cause, like, well, you should never say that, of course, having kids was the right thing and the perfect thing. And, and how those can both exist. Yeah. They can exist together as well.
Yeah, I love that you did that. And I think it's deep, right? And not everybody gets there and would allow themselves to feel that way. And not everybody feels that way. But yeah, I get that. And it's that kind of, not exactly a sliding doors moment, but it's a sort of, what would have been life like if I didn't? And what would life be like if I do? Or and I still say do, because like I said, that I'm aware that there's choices that I may choose to make in the future.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I'm so grateful. I'm grateful I got to be part of, your sharing and how you're sparkling in the world.
Thank you.
And underlining, it's our growth and development matters, and matters to us. And then when we share it with others in an authentic, vulnerable way, like I said, it gives permission, it opens possibilities. And that's always my thing with all of this, is like raising awareness. Where do we have more choice than we thought we did? And, where those choices can take us, and, kind of come out of a limited view to a more expanded, bigger, beautiful. And that's, what I believe your article did. So speaking of your article, that can be found, someone can search in the Guardian, Lucy Handley, and find it probably, right? I mean, I'll have it in the show notes, but just in case somebody doesn't look there. But how else can people find you and discover the other places you've been sharing your gift of writing and the work you're doing?
Sure. So thank you for asking. So I have a website, which is lucyhandley.com. So LucyHandley.com, which is my kind of work website. And something that I'm also nurturing or mothering myself right now is my newsletter, which is called the Honesty Box. And you can find that on the Substack platform. So if you search Substack, the Honesty Box, you'll find it. And that is really, I started that 2 years ago. That's really about partly becoming self-expressed, but mainly about sharing all of this stuff, being vulnerable. And it's not just about being a woman who doesn't have kids or a woman who's single. It's about midlife. It's about things I'm thinking about, things I like, being freelance, how we kind of show appreciation for each other and ourselves, if we don't have a partner, or if we don't have a kind of regular work colleagues. But mainly because I kind of like, I think if we can express ourselves and be vulnerable, then we'll better understand each other and we'll have better relationships, right? So that's where I write about those kinds of things. So that's kind of like my personal blog and newsletter, and you can subscribe for free to that. And that's the kind of project that I'm really trying to nurture and trying to think about where that goes next. So yeah, it's something I really love doing.
I'm so glad, because I was going to
go ahead.
I was going to make sure that we brought that, in, because and I'm going to subscribe, and I just haven't yet. I knew it was, yes. Yeah. You can sign me up, or I will, either way. I'll get a choice, because I I love what you're doing. I'm so on board with, and I love the name, the honesty box. That's perfect. Beautiful. Okay. One last question
Sure.
that I ask at the end of my time with people is, what does rewrite the mother code mean to you?
Oh, great question. I think rewrite the mother code means to me, unwittingly or unintentionally, I kind of had to rewrite my own mother code because I thought I would become a mother in the most traditional sense of the word. So I guess I've had to rewrite it as becoming somebody who nurtures people and helps people feel life sparkle.
Mhm.
So maybe the mother code for me is more about what's your life's purpose, and
Mm,
that can apply to men, it can apply to people who are parents. Certainly does, because it's what does being a mother mean to them. And I guess it's also about the when you say the mother code, I think it's about society, and it goes back to what we were saying about people kind of asking questions of women and men. Do you have kids? And I think
yep.
that those codes in society can be rewritten, and I've certainly kind of rewritten mine to not ask those questions of other people unless I'm invited to.
Beautiful. Well, I love that. Thank you so much for
Thank
being
you,
on,
Gertrude.
coming on and sharing so beautifully and vulnerably. And I can't wait for my audience to hear this.
Thank you so much. I've loved speaking to you. Very happy to do that. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for choosing yourself and taking the time to listen to this podcast. As always, please rate, review, and subscribe to Rewrite the Mother Code. It helps other people who need this message, AKA all women, well, actually everybody, men included, to find it. I'm honored to have you on this journey in mothering yourself. Remember, change is uncomfortable, but it's beautiful, and it starts with us. And if you can't wait until next week's episode, follow me on Instagram and LinkedIn at Dr. Gertrude Lyons, or at my website, drgertrudelyons.com, and sign up for my newsletter. I'll see you next time.